Hey guys, it's Celestia, and today we're gonna talk about how League of Legends ruined my art, and how that experience changed the way I view art styles altogether. Yes, I know how ridiculously impossible it sounds for those things to be related, but they are. We'll get there. First though, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Skillshare, a platform that could help you avoid all of the mistakes I'm about to tell you I made. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Skillshare is my ultimate dream sponsor, and every time I get to tell you guys about them, I get a little more serotonin. Like, I learned every skill I needed to start and build my channel on their platform. And getting the chance to give you guys a free trial to do the same, no matter what you want to learn, is just a huge win to me. If you somehow don't know, in the year 2023, Skillshare is an online learning platform with courses on literally anything you could possibly want to learn. And having used it so much myself, I can confidently say that it's the best platform out there to help anyone turn their creativity and passion into a career. Anything you could possibly need to learn to make that happen is something they have a thorough, in-depth class on, be that anything from web design to video editing to illustration to marketing your business, and it's more than worth checking out for yourself. In terms of starting up creative careers, they even have a Skillshare curated list of courses designed to help you grow yours. My favorite of which is Going Freelance, Building and Branding Your Own Success by Justin Guinak, which I would very much recommend to anyone trying to turn their creative passions into independent careers, because it goes over everything from building a good portfolio to effectively marketing your work and everything in between. Others I've personally taken and found helpful are Adobe Premiere Pro Essentials Training Course by Daniel Scott, which taught me how to edit my videos, and Character Illustration, Drawing Faces, Figures, and Clothing by Gabriel Piccolo, which helped me so much with making my poses less stiff. All of these will be linked in the description, so please go check them out if you're interested. But an even better link is right above them. The first 1,000 of you to click it will be able to get a full month free trial of Skillshare, giving you access to not only the courses I mentioned already, but their entire library. And I mean it when I say that in that month, you'll have the resources and information to take your work to the next level, no matter what that looks like for you. So please go click that link and see for yourself. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, because they make learning fun, easy, and accessible. So please, again, check them out. Alright, so League of Legends ruined my art. I mean, let's be real. It's League. It ruined my life, period. But it ruins everyone's, and that's just something that everyone who plays it eventually comes to accept. There's a reason I've been ranting about it on Facebook for years. I expected it to make me want to fistfight strangers in the pit, uninstall every program that allows me to connect to the internet, and move to a mountain cabin as far away from society as I can get. Those expectations are very regularly met. What I did not expect, on the other hand, was for it to completely demolish my motivation to make art, destroy my art style, and smash my already tiny and fragile self-esteem as an artist into even tinier pieces. But for about a year, that's exactly what it did. Let's talk about how. It all started in 2019, when slightly younger Celestia was living a much happier life, blissfully unaware of the blighted hellscape that is the game League of Legends. It was a simpler time. But then my best friend Zero over at Kato YT, who had been pestering me for years at that point to start playing it with him and had already long since convinced my wife to, finally broke me down, and I played a few games with him, and then I played a few more, and then I was actively being tutored by him and Hoodie, his co-host on Kato YT. Then, in a transition that was so gradual that I barely noticed it happening, I went from playing Morgana support in intermediate bot games in my downtime with friends, to playing my 15th ranked round of Misfortune ADC at 4 in the morning, downing black coffee and screaming at my laptop because I only got an A+ and not the S rank that I needed to get my last Mastery 7 token. In part, I think this was because my being on the spectrum means I'm very susceptible to developing special interests that I hyper-focus on, and also because it was an easy, low-effort way to hang out with friends that wasn't socially draining. In larger part, I think it's because the game's just addicting as fuck and I'm stupidly competitive. The bottom line is that I got really into League, and while the game itself is widely hated by myself and the vast majority of its player base because of the rampant toxicity of the community, the one thing I didn't hate and actually ended up falling in love with was the art style. In League, if you're unfamiliar, there are tons of potential champions that you can play as, and for every champion, there are also tons of skins. The art for all of these champions is absolutely gorgeous, and every time you load into a match, which tended to be a very long period of time because I started playing before I got 5G internet, you get to see the splash art of every champion being played that round. Immersion in the art of League is actually a huge part of enjoying the game, at least for me, and I spent and still spend massive amounts of time just taking it in and appreciating it, often in the form of obsessively collecting all of my favorite skins and hoarding them like some kind of really lame dragon. And as an artist myself, this put me in a conflicting position. On one hand, it made me so inspired to improve my own work work and get on that level so that I could make art as good as the stuff that I was seeing in the game so often. And initially, it did make me actually work to do so. On the other hand, though, it made me feel unbelievably insecure about my art by comparison, because there was such a long way to go before I was anywhere near these artist levels. So I was simultaneously overwhelmingly inspired and deeply discouraged. And the constant combination of inspiration and negative comparison resulted in a lot of growth and study, but also two major problems, which boiled down to style and reference. The style part was definitely the most detrimental though, so let's talk about that first. Basically, what I was doing was equating style to skill, which is a really toxic mentality to have when it comes to art, and also a really common one. I was comparing my style, which at that point was a very simple cel-shaded anime style, to an incredibly realistic style with painterly rendering, and as a result, seeing mine as absolutely terrible by comparison. There's no way a simple anime art style would look the same as a highly rendered, semi-realistic style, and that's not because it's worse, it's because it's not supposed to in the first place. There are realism artists that can't draw anime, and anime artists that can't draw realism, and it's because the style itself is made up of such entirely different elements that trying to make one into the other loses what defines it as a style in the first place. If I compared a cel-shaded chibi to a League of Legends character's splash art and thought, okay, by comparison, to make this better, I need to make the head a realistic size with smaller eyes and a bigger body, and I need to paint it rather than cel-shade it, I would end up with not a chibi anymore, because all of the elements that made it one were eliminated by conflating style with skill. Yes, the League art would be significantly more high effort and polished than the chibi, but the chibi doesn't need to be high effort and polished to be good. Complexity doesn't make one style better, and simplicity doesn't make the other one worse. That's just not the scale that art should be judged on. How it can be healthily and reliably judged is on a scale of how good it is within the frame of its style, like whether or not it's the best version of what it is compared to the general criteria established by other similar work. So, for example, I could have compared my art at that time to League art productively, but by consciously and deliberately analyzing the differences in accuracy rather than style. My style and their style both used semi-realistic anatomy, aside from the facial anatomy, of course. So rather than saying their rendering is so much more detailed and realistic than mine, so I should change mine, which is a stylistic comparison rather than an accuracy-based comparison, I could have said, compared to the way they draw hands, the way I draw mine needs a lot of work, and I can focus on improving that. It's a comparison that, if implemented, would have no impact on the style of my work, but would serve to actually improve it. Obviously, it's a little difficult to make that distinction, because every style is unique, and even anime art or realistic art are labels that have an infinite number of different styles within them, and therefore, there aren't concrete, unchanging criteria that can be used to consistently compare productively. It's something you have to establish for yourself by objectively analyzing the style of the work that you're comparing yours to and deciding what aspects of style you share and what aspects you don't. That way you can look at the aspects you do share, compare them, and figure out what your weaknesses actually are. If you draw faces the same way as the artist you're comparing yourself to, but they don't draw eyes as close together as you do, then maybe that comparison would be productive in allowing you to adjust your methods accordingly and draw your eyes farther apart. That's actually an example of one productive comparison I made in my work this past year and found really helpful. Unfortunately though, for a long time, that's not what I did. I beat myself up for not having the League art style, and instead of actually learning from it to improve my own anatomy and composition, I erased everything that made my style my own in the process. Yes, I did actually learn a lot in the process of studying their style and effectively trying to copy it in my own work. It vastly improved my understanding of anatomy, color, reflective light, and painting. That's just because studying the styles of other artists is actually helpful for study purposes, so long as you do so for that purpose. Unless you literally want to draw exactly like them, rather than just improve your own work, doing it without that purpose will just end up with your own style being overlooked and eventually erased altogether. And comparing your style to a completely different one puts you on the fast track to demolishing your self-esteem and hating your art, which is just, it feels horrible, speaking from experience, and at least for me, it took all the joy out of it and left me completely unmotivated to draw. And that mentality honestly took such a long time to unlearn. I recently started playing League again in my downtime after a pretty long break, and the moment I did, I felt myself making those unhealthy comparisons right away, which speaks to how easy it is to fall into that trap. But this time I actually recognized them as unhealthy and reminded myself to approach those comparisons with much more objectivity, and managed to spend the evening genuinely enjoying that art without letting it make me feel bad about my own. Over time, I've managed to use what I learned from the period of time where League was ruining my art, as well as a lot of conscious, deliberate unlearning of harmful mentalities to implement new techniques into a style that is once again my own. It's grown and changed and it will continue to, but it will do so by my conscious implementation of certain stylistic aspects that I like, and not the imitation of one individual style. And to be clear, I'm not saying it's wrong to deliberately change your style. If you're an anime artist who wants to switch to semi-realism, that is completely okay, and you have every right to do that. Preferring one style to another and deciding to switch to it is a totally normal thing to do in your development as an artist, and I'm not trying to suggest that it's a bad thing. I'm saying that if it's unintentional, like it was for me, you should probably be careful about the way that you compare your art to that of others, because it can lead to your style changing in a way that you never wanted or anticipated. But style comparison wasn't the only way League ruined my art. As I mentioned, there was another element to the problems that it caused: reference. I didn't even know about this until this past year when I took a few industry courses from artists who actually did work for games like League, and learned just how differently they use reference than I had ever expected. Now, I'm not saying every industry artist with League-like styles uses reference like this, but after learning what I have from those courses, I found that a lot of them do. Basically, to speed up workflow and make the art creation process easier, the way they use reference is almost closer to photo bashing than actual reference. They compile a metric ton of very, very individualized reference photos for every single part of the character, and they basically put them on top of each other and tweak them to achieve accuracy. So in the first course I took, they took the face, neck, left arm, and right arm from all different reference images, combined them into the suitable pose, and then put a dress reference over them to create the torso, and, you know, connect them all. Then they took hair references from multiple different sources for multiple parts of the hair and combined them on the head. Then they did the same with adding accessories and props. Then they would basically paint over them as needed to achieve the right level of cohesion across the references in their style, and fix and customize certain areas and mistakes, as well as add shadow and light in their respective areas. The final piece looked as if they'd painted it from scratch, but in reality, it would be more accurate to say that they made themselves a custom base with a lot of detail and painted over it. The end result is well within copyright's protection as transformative, so it can be used by studios, no problem. And because the industry is so time-oriented and projects often need to be done in ridiculously short periods of time, it's pretty well known as a common practice. And I'm not bashing that. It's a valid method, in my opinion, although some of you are likely to disagree, which is fair. So how did it contribute to League ruining my art? Well, because I didn't know about it. I had no idea that this use of reference was so massively common, and I had no idea that many of the pieces that I was comparing my own art to used it that way. So I was shitting on myself for taking hours upon hours to create a piece from scratch that still looked nowhere near as good as theirs, without knowing that they were using resources and practices that allowed them to make better work much, much faster, and I wasn't. So I basically set myself up to fail by comparing my work using reference as, well, reference to their work that, based on how they used it, was almost a separate medium of art altogether. They were results that I could not humanly achieve as quickly or efficiently as they were, and even if I may have been able to create comparable work after spending 10 to 30 hours on a single piece, that is quite simply not a time investment that I can afford to make for every single piece I do. Knowing how this work is often made came as a huge eye-opener to me, and it made me a lot more forgiving of my own work in comparison. But there we have it. That's how League ruined my art. Beyond the time that I hyperfixated on it and decided, fuck drawing, I want to shoot pixels to get a shiny blue badge that tells people how good I am at shooting pixels for a full week, which was probably also unhelpful. Moral of the story: comparison can be really helpful, but it can also be really detrimental. The difference is found in how objectively, deliberately, consciously, and productively you actually make those comparisons, especially when it comes to style. Don't let the art of others make you feel bad about your own, and more importantly, don't play League of Legends. Just don't do it. Not because of the art, just League players, you know what I mean. Non-League players, if you're living a League-free life, you're living your best life. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and thank you so much for watching. Special thank you as always to channel members Cafe Soleil, Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Juso Uzi Hakumo, Stanley, Haruki Kenway, and The Art of Amethyst Fable, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, Alenkshi, Kim Nguyen, Shamil Sheep, Crazy Hisar, Gentong, Jacobus Peterson, Grayson Xavier, Eeyore Hiha, NG, Blah Mage, TC Pratt, Finn, Stephen Jett, Ash W, Dark Sun, Inside Chaos, Eldritchia, The Stray Dog, and Ulura for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.